Hey there! I wanted to make this video to kind of clear up a little bit about my position on things and to show and kind of say like things that could happen where I'd be wrong. And then things where I haven't really taken enough stance and I'm saying, well, it could be one of these. I don't know. And so, right, I've been interested in Q. I've been interested in it. But what I've said the whole time is, I don't know. Is it legitimate? I'm not sure. And so my position has kind of been like, what I think's going on here is what I don't think is going on here is that this is some independent hoax operating entirely independent of the Trump administration, of politics in general, or of any aspect of the United States government or of a sort of any organization with high levels of political influence. From my looking into this, I've kind of ruled that out as a possibility. This isn't something independent. This isn't something a bunch of random dudes put out there. If that were true, then I'd be wrong. But what I'm saying is I think it's either legitimately, essentially what it says it is to an extent. I don't think things are very straightforward. So, legitimately what it says would just be that there is some operation involving the U.S. military to combat what we could call this deep state cabal, right? That would be any sort of legitimacy to Q if there is actually such a effort, there is something working in that manner to oppose, to go after this cabal and especially their kind of human trafficking operation, right? If there's not at all that, then that means Q wouldn't be legitimate at all. And, the scenarios I've entertained with that are that it is the PSYOP. But, if that were the case, what I'm saying is it's not an independent hoax, right? Not an independent thing going on. It would be something essentially by the deep state itself to try to confuse people, create whatever division. Honestly, here's what I think where it would be really is because, it's our spirituality and it's our vibration that's like what the whole conspiracy is really about, trying to keep us in that certain lower levels of vibration, lower levels of consciousness. I can explain all that in other videos, right? But it's all the geometry, network, fractal, holographic, right? And there's this constant motion of quantum fluctuations, and right? Okay, yeah. And then so that's the vibrations, right? And then so there's, it's not just simply like a linear high low. I don't know, man. All right, so where I think if Q were some sort of PSYOP, like something by the deep state itself and not legitimately an operation to oppose the deep state, I should have centered the camera so then it's like this. No white space over there. Huge fractal field, bro. It's pretty awesome. This is what I wear to work. This is like a work sweater. I turn the camera sideways. Good idea, bad idea. It depends on what mechanism you're using to watch this. If you're on your phone, bad. If you're watching it on TV, good. Or a computer, sure. All right, time. What is Q? What I've been saying is, I think it's either one of those two. Not an independent hoax. If Q were an independent hoax, I'm wrong. Sorry, I was wrong. That's all right. But if it were a deep state PSYOP, that was one of the I lean towards it being legitimate. Like, I'm not trying to act like that's not kind of my position. But I don't know, man. I've been saying that the whole time. Like, dude, I don't know. I don't know how people are so sure of themselves all the time when it comes to stuff like this. It's like, I think it could be, but I don't really know, man. And so, if it is, it's all that it would be more of, be more of that spiritual thing to think, so you're just hoping and waiting to be saved instead of doing the inner work yourself. And so, as your outer world is a reflection of your inner world, instead of doing that kind of inner work. What's the inner work? I don't know, like meditation. That excuse me. That's what it would be more if it were a psyop by the deep state. It would be more a deep spiritual thing. That's my opinion. If it were that, and it might be, but that's why that's why I still try to work on that stuff as well. So you just sit there like, I don't need to try to purify my soul and move towards my own higher state of consciousness. I'm just gonna let the government do it for me or something, right? And no, you don't want to do that, of course, so it's that kind of aspect would be where I think Q could be this sort of psyop to kind of trick people into not doing that type of work and instead just hoping and waiting to be saved, right? Okay. And so it's weird, like, I'm looking at the wrong. No, where's the camera, dude? It's trippy. This always trips me out doing these because, like, you can't look. If you look in your eyes, you're not looking at the camera. If you look at the camera, then you can't see your eyes. It's trippy. It's confusing. And it was not even the first time I've just kind of went off on that tangent while making one of these videos. And you're sitting here going, get on with it, dude, if you're even watching. Maybe somebody will one day. And that's why I make these kind of videos. Not always to be watched right away. Maybe a year from now, a few months from now, people are like, yo, what? And then they start watching my videos. And it's like, yeah, see, I was trying to tell you. And so that's been my position. Because, some people, they come out today and are like, the Epstein files show that Epstein was behind Q with Steve Bannon. And, it's like because they helped influence and create 4chan or whatever. Maybe. But see, then that would be part of what I'm saying is, well, then it's not an independent hoax. It's part of, it would be an intentional misdirection. I mean, plenty of people think that too. But, you know what I mean? So, but, the mainstream media narrative on Q or QAnon would be that it is an independent hoax. I mean, they don't try to tell you it's actually something the Trump administration is doing, but illegitimate. They don't entertain psychological operations to fool people, because then it's like, wait, why are there psychological operations to fool people? But that's the whole point. So, I mean, Q not being an independent hoax legitimizes some conspiracy, because obviously, right? I mean, they're intentionally trying to manipulate us in one way or another, either legitimately, like you says, and they're trying to stop it, or in a manner to put forth something like Q to trick people into whatever, right? If the government is running these type of operations, that verifies that there's some conspiracy, right? I mean, people are so weird with conspiracies. We're like, dude, especially, 5-6 years ago, where they're like, no conspiracies, never conspiracies. And then they're like, I think that they're, right, start saying all these things like, they rigged the 2024 election. They're trying to create a fascist state. And I mean, they say all this shit, and it's like, well, that sounds a lot like people saying they rigged the 2020 election to try to create the New World Order. I mean, they're different things, but it's like, why would one be a conspiracy and one not? And then now people are all like, Bernie Sanders, literally said the thing, like, there's a big club and you're not in it, in referencing this kind of Epstein stuff. And it's like, dude, that is what a conspiracy theory is, man. Especially when you start talking about them abusing children. It's like, dude, what? There's a network that abuses children and traffics people, and it's this big club, and they do all these things, and it's like, that's what a fucking conspiracy is. Like, that's the conspiracy. I mean, not the esoteric whole thing, but that's like a pretty big part of it. So it's like weird that people are like they're starting to entertain certain ideas, but not like connect it. So what is a conspiracy then? Right? But that doesn't mean the conspiracy theorists are right on this. And so, but here's where I wanted to go with this. I mean, say that. I mean, my stance the whole time is Q's one of the other, either basically legitimate. I don't think it's as straightforward as some people who think that's legitimate might be. or who used to think it was legitimate might be. A lot of people who dropped out, I don't think ever really got it. But because my position is kind of in too is that I think the Great Awakening is going to happen regardless of whether Q is what it says it is exactly or not. You know, right? We're going to move past. There has been this historical corruption. Satanic sacrifices. Oh, whoa, what does that mean? I don't usually use the phrase satanic because I think there's a lot of confusion on like, well, what's Satan? And then some people were like, dude, they're sacrificing to Yahweh. Right? And so it's like, well, Yahweh, Satan, you know, what are these things? And, you know, right, the type of entities. And I mean, I think, and obviously, because of the religions, a lot of this gets confused. And it's like, well, you know, that's why I don't usually use those phrasings. You know, I think, you know, I don't know what I say. Yeah, I do. I just say human trafficking at all, and then usually say relating to the historical practice of human sacrifice to gods or demons, because it's all. And so, and this is where I was going to touch on this eventually too. Is more where I'm at is a philosophy. I mean, I don't, you know, politics, conspiracy theories. Yeah, I've dabbled quite a bit, but I mean, I would say my real area of focus is in the philosophy. And that's where, and I've very clearly taken specific points on the philosophy, and there's a little more, and then philosophy encompasses a lot, because obviously, you know, if you're a materialist and you believe kind of the mainstream views of physicalism and all that, then, you know, the idea of sacrificing people to gods, demons, whatever kind of thing that'd be going on there would be something you would dismiss. I mean, you might think they kill people, you know, right? But like the idea that they're doing this and then like summoning demonic entities, I mean, of course, if you don't believe those things exist, then you're not going to support that whole idea, which is why the philosophy, just, you know, which provides a foundation for how something like that could exist, would be a necessary component to at least have some grasp of. If you take a philosophy that denies that existence ontologically, you know, that it couldn't be a thing as demons, you know, you reject the ontology of that based on your metaphysical foundation of physicalism, then, you know, of course, you would just dismiss that as possible. Your metaphysical foundation is what provides the means for your ontology, as in your perception of the nature of reality and how, like, the universe works provides the means for what you think is possible for things to exist. A materialist wouldn't think a spiritual entity is possible, right? You know, a spiritual entity would be, you know, say spiritual entities exist as a certain ontology, and to provide, you know, a means of a metaphysics of a fractal holographic consciousness, fundamental consciousness universe would be like the metaphysics point. All right, yeah, that's kind of a little bit on the difference between metaphysics and ontology, which I used to kind of get confused on that for a while. I was going to make a video all about that because I think it's not really that important to understand. But it's interesting. Where were we going with this, right? And so where the philosophy is critical. I'm wrong about everything. I'm just totally wrong if materialism is true. If that's really what's happening here, and like mainstream science has the accurate perspective that, you know, there's just a physical world, and then, you know, life just happened to come about. Wow, just primordial soup, dude. Okay, life just happens, man. Yeah, okay, and then it just, you know, happened to evolve through random mutations and natural selection, just kind of, you know, how it happened to be, and then eventually, you know, it was made consciousness entities, and our consciousness is just the epiphenomenon of our brain. And that's just all there is to it, because it's a physical universe following physical laws. And that's all there is. It just happened to make consciousness as the byproduct, something produced by the brain. If that's true, I am wrong. All right, I'm going to be very clear on that. Where you could say like there's things where it's like, oh, dude, you're just trying to cop out by like providing a position where you're never wrong with Q. No, I'm saying I don't know. I already provided you the position where I would be wrong. Independent hoax, totally unrelated to any sort of high-level political operation. It doesn't necessarily have to be government, but if it's like if it was Epstein and Steve Bannon, then I would say that's not independent hoax. It's something related to a kind of the deep state control, the deep state cabal then, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? So they might not be working through the government per se, but it would be part of the deep state or part of more, deep state would be more government, but it'd be part of the cabal that would, this network of human trafficking people and whatever that would do this. Then it's just like, that's not an independent hoax, that's an intentional misdirection. That is a conspiracy. They're conspiring to lie to you, right? And so I'd be wrong, right? It's not like I'm not trying to, I'm just telling you honestly what I think here. This is what I've been saying the whole time. I'm wrong if Q was some independent hoax. I'm wrong if there's materialism, if materialism is true. Physicalism, reductive physicalism. And, those things are true. I'm wrong. If, it's a similar thing of like ancient past. If mainstream history is the accurate perspective and not an alternative history that dates much further back, that deals with more advanced civilizations in the past, that deals with the idea that they had this advanced understanding to be able to manipulate these structures in such a way within the Earth's geometric grid, the energy grid of the Earth, to try to cultivate the energy and like move these structures, not just like through ropes and pulleys and logs and pushing it brute force, but through some sort of advanced understanding, advanced technology to be able to build these things like the pyramids, a lot of pyramids around the world, but, specifically look at the pyramids of Giza or something like that, that they didn't, the mainstream view of history. If that were accurate, that's something very much I've challenged. If that were accurate, then I'm wrong. If mainstream history and mainstream science are really what's happening here, that's the correct worldview, I am wrong. That is foundational to everything I've been saying. And it all relates to the philosophy. The similar, and the other types of beings, whether they be what you call a physical being or some sort of what you could call like a spiritual being, some other types of beings that have interacted with humans in the ancient past and throughout history, really, including today. If none of that were true, then I'm wrong. Like, these are things I've very clearly taken a stance on and said. And so, those things I could be wrong on. Like, right? Just like, oh yeah, dude, it turns out, physicalism's really what's happening, and mainstream history is the best understanding. That's like pretty much what happened, and there's no such thing as, there hasn't been extraterrestrial contact. There's no such thing as spiritual entities. Then I'm wrong, bro. Like, yeah. Like, that's where, because it's all a philosophy I've put forth, talk about it all the time, and like a holographic fractal model, consciousness as fundamental, which relates to esoteric philosophy, which are things in the past and this, occult understanding that has been subjected, the institutionalized religions were against this, and then mainstream science has clearly been against this in favor of the materialism, in favor of the reductive physicalism, that, they don't think consciousness is fundamental, they think consciousness is derivative. And so if that were true, if consciousness were derivative, from a physical universe existing in itself as physical, I would be wrong. That is the foundation of my point. It's all the philosophy. The politics I've been saying the whole time. I'm like, dude, I don't really know. I think there could be some legitimacy to Q, but I don't know. But I've also said the whole time, I'm like, well, based on what I've seen from this, I don't think it's an independent hoax. Because, there's a lot to it. One, Trump is consistently shared Q memes, a lot. He's done it many times. He's look on truth. And it's, real obvious. It's just like a Q, and he's just posted all the time. Sometimes like a Q plus, and sometimes Q phrasings, right? You know what I mean? And those things are reasons why, not the only reasons why, but part of the reasons why it's like, okay, well, that doesn't, some connection between Trump and Q doesn't verify the legitimacy of Q, which just verifies that, like I'm saying, it's not an independent hoax. It's something the government's doing. Could be a psyop, could be legitimate, right? And that's what I've been saying the whole time. It's like, and then not plenty of people, are saying that, when they say it's a psyop, it's not, the mainstream understanding is not that it's, right, as I was saying before. It's like, that's still different. That's still a conspiracy. And I think one of those two conspiracies is what's happening, not some independent hoax of Q. Right? That's the key to get here. Because that's what I'm saying, if the thing about Steve Bannon, conspiring, okay, pick a different word, I did on purpose. If Steve Bannon and Epstein were, behind Q, then, okay, well, then it is a conspiracy coming from essentially this kind of cabal, right? So, then that would be that, then. So I was like, all right. Now, I'll admit that I'm leaning towards Q as legitimate, or something towards Q as legitimate. I think the Great Awakening is going to happen either way, and we're going to move past, and these things are going to get exposed. That's been my stance for a while now. And I think that's going to happen whether Q is legitimate or not. And so then Q could have played a role in how that all happens, even if it were a psyop, which still, okay, right? And so Q still played a role in the Great Awakening happen. As long as things get exposed, as long as the horrible bad things stop happening, that's great, right? All right. And then obviously we have to move and create a better world and do all that from there. All right, first we want to make them stop abusing children. That would be nice, right? Yeah. All right, yeah. But that's kind of what I wanted to get out here is, dude, I don't know what's going on with Q for real. I lean towards legitimate, but I very well could be wrong in that regard, which is why I've stayed on that's why I lean, okay. I'm pretty confidently telling you it's not an independent hoax. I don't know for sure, obviously, but strong, if it's an independent hoax, I am wrong, and I will admit I am wrong. If it were actually cabal-operated psyop, well, that was one of the possibilities I was entertaining the whole time. Would I have been leaning towards wrong? Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. You're right, yeah, okay. But, that's not like I'm not leaning towards consciousness as fundamental. I'm taking a pretty hard stance on that. That's what I'm saying. It's not like I don't waffle, am that what I'm trying to use? Waffle between, I'm not trying to, I don't know. Pancakes, I like waffles. In the morning, I'm making waffles. Great line, everybody remembers that, Shrek. Well, Donkey said it in the movie Shrek, obviously. Shrek, he wasn't entertaining the donkey. He's an ogre. He was grumpy. Donkeys like waffles. Ogres, what are they like? I don't know. What does he eat? Mud and bugs. All right. Have you ever fed a donkey a waffle? I wonder if they'll actually eat it. Probably. Anyways. Especially a talking donkey. They love waffles. All right, yeah, so that's where I wanted to get at, and then I mentioned free energy, there's no such thing as free energy, there's no such thing as that type of technology beyond what the mainstream physics can understand, and I'm wrong, totally wrong about that. Yeah. Those, as the philosophy is the foundation of my view, as I think the foundation of everyone's view should be philosophy, like metaphysics in particular, because what could be happening at all that isn't fundamentally happening with the nature of all existence? You first want to have some sort of stance regarding the nature of all existence and then build everything off of that, right? Wouldn't that make sense? Makes sense to me. And so, yeah, that's all I'm saying, right? I've rambled. I keep saying everything, so I don't know how to just end it. 24 minutes, bro. Why wrap it up, dude? I'm trying to move on to the next video. Well, thanks for watching this far. I appreciate it. But yeah, man, you're not right. All right, yeah, you get it. And so, yeah, right. I don't know. Q? Legitimate? Psyop? I think it's one of those. Independent hoax? No, I do not think it's an independent hoax. And if it is, I'm wrong. Now, I've leaned wrong if it is a psyop. Did I really get fooled that hard? Well, I didn't live my life any differently. Now, am I living my life differently because of my other conspiracy theories? Well, especially when it came to COVID, yeah, I guess, right? I mean, I would have lived. I don't live my life any differently, really, except for like talking about it sometimes. When it comes to Q, like I don't do anything different in my life. But I would have done things differently had I not have been a COVID conspiracy theorist. Yeah, sure, I would have worn masks and taken the vaccine, but I didn't. I'm wrong. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot that can be wrong on COVID. If mainstream science, if the worldview of reductive physicalism and all that is the accurate depiction of how the reality works, then, excuse me, then I'm wrong. Yeah, I could be totally wrong about COVID. If COVID was actually a natural event, which honest governments reacted to, yeah, I'd be wrong. I'd be wrong about that. Yeah. I don't think it is. I haven't changed my stance on COVID one bit. And I'm not changing my stance on Q. I have said the entire time. I got tweets, I got videos. I think Q could be one or the other. Not an independent hoax, though. Some sort of psyop, some sort of legitimacy to it. I lean towards legitimacy. And insofar as there has been an intentional operation, it's not a total psyop. Like that, because I'm saying it could be a psyop, but the Great Awakening could still happen. And then it's like, well, Q still played a role in that. And it's just like, and because it's not, none of this is so straightforward in terms of like, bad people and bad entities, NIH, ET, demons, and they're all trying to manipulate and control us, and then the good guys, and I mean, the lines are blurred, who's good, who's bad, and so and it's all fostering towards our whole, it's this whole thing, and the geometry, and right, it's the whole nature of existence, it's not just good and evil, all right, and so it's all leading up towards our Great Awakening. And that also has to do with the fact that, my conjecture that, the universe can dictate certain causation over and above the sum of its parts, certain directive causes to organize in certain manners beyond what the mainstream science of reductionism would think. And so, this is going to be all happening as a means, the universe is essentially orchestrating it, not just people in some conspiratorial fashion. Yeah, I got to cover a lot on that because we got to go over a whole bit on the nature of causation and all that. That's the thing. If you're a reductionist, of course you would deny that. And that's important to get. That's why the philosophy is your foundation. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out there a little bit because I'm seeing these things and I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. Was Q legitimate? Was it a psyop? I think it's one of those two options. Lean towards legitimate, but I don't know. Like, I'm not going to lie to you and say, like, I don't lean towards legitimate, but I'm not lying to you and I say, I don't know, dude. I mean, it might not be. It might be a psyop. But I don't think it's an independent hoax. It's a key detail. If it is an independent hoax, dude, I'm wrong. Materialism, wrong. That's me. I got that one wrong. And so, we'll see what happens here. I don't know, but it's getting interesting. It's getting interesting. And no matter what, I mean, it's just a philosophy. Right? Spirituality, bro. That's what's up. But anyways, thanks for listening. Hopefully, you got some out of that crazy rambling. That's how I do it. It's fun for me.